life's just more fun under critical.
What's up? So since I have more mobility now that I have like just a regular camera instead of using my eyesight on my Mac, I figured I'd film outside. So for my freshman seminar class, which is required for all freshmen in my college, I had to read this. Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. The author actually is the same author that wrote Everything is Illuminated and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, or Incredibly Close and Extremely, I don't know. But one of the two. I had to write a 3-page essay on the very same book, and I liked my essay, so I figured I would transfer it into video form for you. So I don't know if many of you remember this video, but this went out like 2 years ago. Basically, it was me announcing that I was going to start an experiment to see how long I could be a vegetarian for. Now, it ended pretty quickly. About 3 months later, I was like, it's really inconvenient to be a vegetarian. But when I started eating meat again, it felt heavy and gross on my stomach. So I've kind of been a pseudo-vegetarian ever since. Now, when I started reading this book, I wasn't exactly sure what would happen. I didn't know if I would become, a full vegetarian and stop just sort of picking at meat when I had to, or I didn't know if I'd become, a vegan or something like that. So I really was fairly open-minded when I went into this book. So one of the first things that Foer argues about in his book is how humans have kind of a moral obligation to respect life and refrain from eating meat. And he doesn't really say this like straight out, but a lot of the quotes he uses, especially early on in the book, and his kind of discussion of them afterwards, is fairly obvious that he agrees with this point. Now, this was the first thing that I disagreed with. Because why are humans the ones who have to shoulder the moral responsibility that comes with killing and eating animals? I mean, if we weren't the top of the food chain, and we kind of are and aren't, then we wouldn't be concerned with this at all. We and most other animals like us have evolved and grown with the taste of other animals on our tongues. Just because we have the ability or the option to eat things other than meat doesn't mean that we have a moral obligation to. One of the people he interviews in his book, Nicolette Niemann, the wife of a rancher who is also a vegetarian, kind of shares my opinion of this kind of idea. She says, quote, "Clearly it's normal and natural for animals to eat other animals, and since we humans are part of nature, it's very normal for humans to be eating animals," unquote. And I completely agree with that. It's not a moral thing, it's just part of life. But with that in mind, I do have to accept Foer's arguments against the phenomenon of factory farming. While I don't think that we have a moral obligation to not eat meat, I do believe we have a moral obligation not to eat meat of tortured, factory-farmed, genetically modified animals. I can't willingly buy into an industry that tortures living beings for the pure benefit of profit, even though it doesn't benefit the living beings we are farming or the living beings that we are feeding. I am a living being, just like all of these other animals, and I think that needless torturing is needless. Nicolette Niemann, again, has thoughts on this matter as well. I love Nicolette Niemann. She's like the only person I quoted. Quote, "Does anyone really doubt that the corporations that control the vast majority of animal agriculture in America are in it for the profit? In most industries, that's a perfectly good driving force. But when the commodities are animals, the factories are the earth itself, and the products are physically consumed, the stakes are not the same, and the thinking can't be the same," unquote. This kind of business plan follows the same logic as painting toys with lead paint because it's cheaper than being safe. I'd just like to say really quickly that I am not a member of PETA and I will never become a member of PETA, but I don't think that you have to be a huge animal activist to admit that this kind of treatment of animals, especially in factory farms, is wrong. The last part of this book that I want to discuss is the difference between animal rights and animal welfare. PETA advocates for animal rights, which is, quote, "arguing that animals are not here for us to use," while many traditional farmers advocate for animal welfare, which is basically an argument stating that animals should be treated humanely. And I have to admit, I'm more of the animal welfare persuasion for 3 reasons. First, animals are here for us to use. Everything on this planet is here for us to use. And on the flip side, some animals may choose to use us. Mosquitoes use us for blood, some giant snakes use us for photo ops and food, and domesticated animals use us for our survival. Maybe no other animals have figured out quite yet how to domesticate and farm other animals in order to use them for food, but that doesn't mean that we should stop. Once another animal gets cleverer than us, we may become the farmed species, and that's not immoral or inhumane, that's innovation and evolution. Second, as Foer acknowledges, quote, people in general want meat, always have, always will, and that's that, unquote. As kindly as their intentions may be, vegetarian advocates are the unrealistic ones in this kind of situation.